All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Maria01 to take part in this morning's community breakfast. Great to see so many of you making your way over here this morning. For the ones of you who don't know me yet, my name is Hanna Nylund and I'm the Chief Impact Officer here at Maria01. I have been working with marketing and communications for some time already in different jobs and in different roles. So I'm quite excited to have had the opportunity to invite our guests here this morning and have the opportunity to discuss everything about PR and communication with some real PR pros. And I hope you've all grabbed some coffee, some sandwiches, croissants, found yourself a seat, and are ready to welcome our first guest up on stage. So, first of all, let me introduce to you a San Francisco agency who has been a partner and a member of the Maria01 community for how many years, Reetta? Reetta is showing me 6, so let's go with 6. That means like since the very beginning of Maria01's history. Yeah, they have been helping both us at Maria01 and our startups with PR and communications related questions. So let me welcome Reetta Ilo up on stage, who will be introducing our next guests. You have a mic over there if you want to choose that one. So, Reetta, I'll let you introduce our next guest who will be joining a bit differently. And maybe you can tell a bit about who we will meet and hear more of.
Sure, thank you, Hanna. Good morning, everyone. Great, full house. Nervous. Good morning. So yes, indeed. Unfortunately, our first keynote speaker of today couldn't make it in person. His name is Kiran Wylie. He's the director of EMEA area comms for Deel. Deel, which is one of the fastest growing startups ever in history, straight from Silicon Valley, but also local here in Finland. So if you want to talk more about Deel and what Deel does, we have Deel's Frank over here. Frank, say. Yes, Frank is here. So speak to Frank. But we wanted Kiran to really tell how Deel has utilized PR in their global growth. So yeah, Kiran is the director of area that Finland is part of as well, and one of San Francisco agency's clients. So we thought that Kiran could share some insights how Deel has utilized earned media coverage to be as great as they are in 20 months to 200 million ARR?
From 0 to 300 million in annual recurring revenue in 2.5 years, roughly. So, yes.
There you go. Beat that. All right.
Thank you, Reetta and Frank. So, as said, we're going to show a short 10-minute video where Kiran talks more about how they've grown through PR. So, if you're sitting there on the side, maybe scooch over for 10 minutes, enjoy your coffee and the video, and then let's get back to the fireside chat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiran Wylie. I'm the Director of EMEA Communications at Deel. For those who might not be aware of us, Deel's an all-in-one HR platform for global teams. So we simplify every aspect of managing your team wherever they might be in the world, from contractors on onboarding to handling local payroll, compliance, and culture. So the way we work is going global. I don't think anyone denies that. So with businesses trying to hire the best talent, they're also trying to hire people from all over the world. But until now, no HR platform has been able to handle everything for everyone. So businesses typically use like different payroll software for every region, or multiple HR platforms for their global mix of workers. And sometimes teams have to use up to 16 different tools to make that work. We are the only single platform that works for teams wherever they are and whatever their employment status. So we offer global teams all the tools they need to hire, onboard, manage, pay, and scale at full speed. So my role as a director of communications for the EMEA region is to work with over 15 different PR agencies across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So my weeks are pretty busy. My main responsibilities are planning, coordinating, delivering our public relations and communications activities across the region, developing our PR strategy, our budget, and our KPIs goals to help increase awareness of Deel throughout the EMEA region. So the main way we do this is by seeking high-level placements in print, broadcast, online media such as news websites, blogs, social media, podcasts, webinars, and much, much more. So it's a really interesting and varied role in a very competitive and fast-growing industry. So no 2 days are the same, which is great. And I constantly feel like I'm learning and growing. So I've been at Deel for just over 18 months. I was the first person to be hired in the communications team at Deel. And since then, we've grown to a team of 5, so spread out all over the world from San Francisco to Sydney, Buenos Aires, and myself in London. So we're a truly global team. We practice what we preach. I've been working in PR for just over 10 years. Prior to Deel, I worked for the fast-growing fintech Revolut for 4 years. I led their European team. And I've also spent some time at global agencies such as M&C Saatchi and Weber Shandwick. So bringing me on to why we use PR, I guess the most important reason, or one of the most important reasons, is it helps us reach our audience in a truly cost-effective way. So as PR focuses on gaining free editorial coverage, it's one of the most cost-effective marketing techniques. Stories in the media carry a lot more weight with an audience than paid for advertisements, we feel, or anything you might write yourself on social media. I guess as well, being a small startup, as we were, we're now a lot bigger, but in those early days, you don't have the big advertising budgets and marketing budgets of more established companies. So gaining free coverage is a great way to get your brand name out there, elevate your CEO, and really get you, that coverage that is harder to find. So it also helps build and maintain Deel's visibility and boost our brand awareness. So having a regular cadence of media coverage helps you build a strong presence with your target audience. And keeps Deel's name at the forefront of people's minds and ensures it becomes a familiar and trusted brand. So we've spent a lot of time ensuring that Deel gets a great range of coverage across all the EMEA markets. And our focus to begin with was basically on getting as much coverage as we could. And now as a bigger scale up, we target bigger publications, less coverage, but deeper coverage. I guess the third reason would also be it explains why companies need our product. So for companies like Deel that are bringing new innovations to market, the challenge is to build awareness and also educate companies about the benefits of Deel and finding the best global talent. PR is a great way for us to educate our audience alongside our blog, and it can also help us fast track entry into new global markets. So this has been really important for us, and it is really important for companies planning to go global. International PR can provide some really valuable support for sales staff on the ground by getting us exposure with local trade press or local press in general. And this is something that teams can refer to when they're pitching our product. Showing some great coverage from the Baltics or from Germany or from France in your local market can be really great. And an additional benefit is it drives traffic to your website. So we often see website traffic spike after significant media coverage. People who read an article in the press tend to look online for further information, and that can be really, really helpful. And in some cases, digital outlets will include a direct link to your website. Another way we drive traffic is by posting our press releases or blogs onto our website, and that provides a regular supply of content and helps boost our visibility in search rankings. And last but not least, it also helps boost our company value. So regular media coverage not only raises the profile of our brand, but as the company's name becomes better known, it also boosts the value of our business. So company profiles or interviews with CEO help play a really key part in attracting the right investment into your company. So I guess some of the examples that we've used for using PR to grow globally, one of the main ones is through our global hiring report. So to provide a little bit more context of this, at Deel, we sit on a huge amount of hiring data, and it's one of the most fascinating and successful campaigns that we've run across the business is our biannual State of Global Hiring report. So we're into the second year of this report, and we look at a range of data points from over 260,000 teammate contracts, 15,000 customers around the world in over 160 countries. So it is a pretty incredible amount of data. And with that, we can explore what companies around the world are hiring, what kind of roles, the salaries that are being paid, the roles that are most popular for global workers, and even whether they're deciding to be paid in cryptocurrency or different currencies. So this treasure trove of data allows us to supply local journalists with really useful data for their readers and their audience, and also to be able to keep their finger on the pulse of global hiring and economic situations. So, for example, we saw that towards the end of last year, despite the economic downturn affecting companies around the world, hiring cross borders has continued to grow, and that's far outpaced any downsizing trends. So those are some of the really interesting insights that we can pull from our own data and turn those into stories that are really, really useful for journalists and audiences around the world. We've also focused a lot on thought leadership and opinion pieces from our C-suite, our country managers, and our heads of department and sales leads to help provide their expert opinion on topics ranging from local talent shortages to our growth story, and also really important local topics around compliance and new jurisprudence in countries. So lastly, we have a social media nomad who we hired last year, and this is a more consumer-friendly announcement that's helped us gain some wider media pickup. So we offered a dream job role where we advertise our hunt for a social media nomad, and we provided them with an all-expenses paid trip across Australia and New Zealand for 6 months in a camper van. So it's an incredible role, and they've been creating social media content for us to use on our social media accounts to promote the benefits of remote work. So from that job spec and the advertisement for the job, we ended up with over 1,500 people applying for the role. We got a huge amount of coverage from Australia, New Zealand, to Spain, to the US, and also in South America. Our winner, Carly, is now currently 2 months into her role, and we've had some incredible results from that, just from a simple consumer idea that works really, really well. And I shouldn't also forget events. So related to the PR front, we've appeared at a number of events such as Slush and Arctic 15 in Finland, to Web Summit in Portugal, TechCrunch Disrupt, Money 2020, and much, much more. And this, combined with PR efforts while we're at these conferences, have been great for building our brand awareness around the globe. So that brings me to time for my talk today. So thank you to Maria01 for inviting me to speak at this breakfast event. I hope you have a great time. Enjoy your morning and chat soon. Goodbye.
All right. Hey, inspiring story. Great tips on driving traffic to website, on how to utilize data for creating press releases, and social media nomad. Quite a nice job. Not that I don't like spending my mornings here with you. But hey, let's move on. And at this point, maybe we'll welcome Reetta back up on stage to take a seat. You get to choose whichever. You're the first one up here. So welcome back, Reetta. And yeah, let's bring back our second guest also up on stage. And I think for everyone in this room who's been following Finnish business news, startup news, I guess HS Visio and Elina Lappalainen is no stranger to you. So welcome Elina as well up on stage. Please have a seat, and I will give our guests the opportunity to introduce themselves just in a bit. So Reetta, do you have a mic or did it disappear? It disappeared. We will get you your own mic. And at this point, I also want to thank everyone who already sent in some great questions to our guests while signing up for the event. Some of them are here in my notes, and let's make sure to leave around 50 minutes at the end of the session to have time to listen to some of your questions. So if you already now have a question in mind, or if something comes up during the fireside chat, please keep that in mind. And once we're moving on to the questions, you can just raise your hand. And I think I have Annika, my colleague, somewhere around here today over there with the mic in her hand. So she'll bring you the mic and then we're ready for your question. But hey, let's get started. Yeah. Let's start with Elina, you. Maybe you can tell a bit about yourself firstly and what you do at HS Visio, and maybe for the ones who haven't yet come across HS Visio, what type of media that is.
Good morning. So nice to see you all here. I have 3 points about me, about Visio, and then why I love my job. So first of all, I have been around since 2011, so quite from beginning of Slush or almost beginning of Aalto years. So it's been a privilege and great journey with all of the Finnish unicorns. I've seen them since beginning. I've covered Supercell's first funding round. I've seen all of them since they were babies. I used to work in Talouselämä and Kauppalehti for 9 years. And Helsingin Sanomat founded HS Visio in January 2021. So we are about 2 years old now. And they recruited me because they wanted to have the best coverage in startups. And so that's what I've been doing now. And Visio it's a kind of strange animal. Whereas the regular Helsingin Sanomat business section is telling the straight news, like what do you need to know during that day about business. Visio is trying to give you broader understanding and tell deeper stories why this is important. We write about technology, stock markets, economics, and politics, also startups. but we have a target audience. We don't write to general public. We write for those who are professionals, who are interested about these topics, already know something about, who are forerunners in technology, who want to advance in their careers and in business. So that's our angle, and it defines also our journalism in many ways. So, and then while my job point, it's because of you, actually. See, it's because of I love hanging around with startups. The founders are inspiring. I'm a geek girl, and I'm interested in technology and all the gadgets and innovations. And I generally think that startups can make world a better place. They can innovate things that matter, and they can bring growth to Finnish society and help us sustain the welfare state we have. So that's why I think this is important.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that we all here can agree with today, and something we've also really seen here at Maria 01 and with our startups. And I also must say, yeah, you're right, but you've also launched fairly recently a podcast. I myself is a big fan of that. It's short and concise episodes that you can listen to while walking to work in the morning. So
the podcast has been around for 2 years. You just noticed when I started there.
It might be that I've just picked it up now that I've seen you're the one hosting it. So anyways, check that out as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's move on to Reetta. And so Reetta, you represent a PR agency. Can you tell a bit more about what you as a PR agency do? Maybe a bit what you in your role do, and kind of how you fit into this whole picture when we talk about startups and media and getting into the news.
Sure. So for a living, I read HS Visio. Well, not just that, but yeah. So San Francisco agency is Finland's most international PR agency that has, from the get-go, really been focused on helping startups and tech companies get into earned media. And what does that mean? Well, we are basically like a piece between the tech teams and tech companies and journalists. We are not a necessary part of it. Like, you know, everybody can of course go and you know, pitch the story to Elina or whoever, whenever. But sometimes us being quite teams in Finland being quite technical and maybe a bit more focused on their product and so on, they might need some help in how to formulate their story so that journalists find it interesting. And I would say, like, the biggest thing that we really do is that we talk with the founders and they are like, oh, we have this thing coming up, would this be interesting? So we are kind of there as a mirror in a way, or as a, I don't want to say a gatekeeper, but in a way we help them be like, maybe that's not as newsworthy as you maybe wish, but let's work on it a bit, and maybe we can find an angle that could be interesting.
Yeah, I know I and probably a lot of other people also tend to get kind of, I mean, you love your own ideas and you always think they are great and the best. So what I definitely value about Reetta and her team is maybe that voice of reasoning sometimes where she goes like, maybe not everyone thinks it's the best idea, although you do. So I think that's good to have someone being that voice. And maybe if we dive back into the topic of journalism, Elina, I know you've spoken a lot about kind of the importance of understanding what the role of media and journalism is. And we have a lot of people here today eagerly listening and taking notes. So how would you kind of describe what journalism and media like HS Visio actually do and what your real job is?
Yes, I sometimes see my role as a media educator. Sometimes people don't realize that we are not here to serve startups. We are here to serve our readers. We have a responsibility towards our readers, and that's sometimes that brings a conflict of interest, and we are always loyal to the interest of reader, and it's not that we are not interested about your startup. It's just that we think what's interesting, what brings value to the reader. We don't focus so much on those clicks, how many views we get. We focus in Visio how many subscribers the story brings. It means that the story has to bring so much value that someone thinks that subscribing Helsingin Sanomat is worth it. And why would your story be valuable for someone? What makes it so? What do the people learn from it? What does it make them better in their job? Does it give them an experience? Does it touch them? Or is there something they understand from world better after reading that story? We try to tell about things that matter, that have a significance in the world. So does your story answer some of those points? That's maybe something that you should understand in journalism. So we might have different goals. You might want to sell your product, but to understand what we are doing might help us not to kind of miscommunicate, or we are trying to do our job as well as we can, and I honestly try to do as ambitious journalism as I can to serve my readers.
Yeah, exactly. So what we get kind of caught up with when we do comms as companies is that you think that, okay, this gadget or a product or service I do, or this new hire we did, like that's super exciting news for you and for your company. But like, think about the news you want to read. Like if nothing else, maybe that can help you. Like, would you like to read about a new feature in of course there's differences if you're Adobe or if you're Apple, maybe then your new feature might be newsworthy, but really think about what kind of stories you want to read. And then when you have something happening in your company, exactly what Elina said, does it surprise? Does it educate? Does someone go like, I didn't know that. That's interesting. I want to learn more. So really, that's why sometimes also in-house marketers who are like top professionals in doing marketing don't necessarily understand PR, because the tone of voice and the way the story needs to be crafted is completely different.
Super interesting. Elina, how do you know what your readers want to read?
Well, I have lived with the target group for all my adult age. I represent my target group, so it helps. But basically, there are three kinds of stories we have, I would say. there are news that are given us under embargo or just breaking news. Like if Tunga buys Small Giant Games, it's a kind of no-brainer that we covered. Then we might do an analysis. We might do a story. How did this happen? How does it influence the Finnish games industry and etc. And find different angles to it. But then there are these our own ideas where we sit down and think what's important at the moment, what's kind of in the air, what signals do we pick from our sources, from the floor, from events like this. We try to talk with people and then kind of formulate angles that if we have an idea, the idea is not yet a story. We need to have an angle. Why this story needs to be written? How? What's the method? What's the narrative in here? What's the structure for the story? How do we do the interview? What's the visual idea? How do we tell it? And kind of what's the working headline for it? This is where we start. Like it's not just let's make a story of quantum computers. We need to be specific why this is important to tell. But then there is a third form of route how things come to our table, and it's the tips, whistleblowing, leaks, kind of leads to investigative stories. And then we look at it and think, is this important enough? Does this have a broader societal meaning? Why we should put our resources to this? And then it might become a story.
Interesting. Do you have a favorite out of those three groups? Which one you like to write about the most?
Not really, but they have different time perspectives. News can be, well, sometimes I get a text message that something is going to happen at 11. Be awake. And then I'm, okay, some US stock company buys something from Finland because of the schedule, okay. So then I write the news in 15 minutes when it happens. So that's the quickest thing. But then investigative journalism can take months before the first thing we hear from it when it's actually published. So the perspective is so different. It's sometimes hard to combine all these to the calendar.
Interesting. Is Reetta, when you work with startups or companies, is this kind of grouping something you also do, and do you see maybe one type of stories being more common among like early stage startups, or where kind of does your focus usually go?
Great question. I think when it comes to timeline, it's more about, okay, what is your goal? What do you want to achieve? Like if you want Elina or Business Insider or someone else make like a big story about you, you need to give it time. It might be that you need to pitch one story angle for months, you know, or try and find together with the journalist the angle that works, or you know, sometimes the journalist might say like, super interesting, I'm gonna work on this within 3 months, and you're like, great, I'll hold this, I won't give this to anyone else in the meanwhile. So that's one. Especially if you aim for the tier 1 media, you need to also accept that your story is not published when you want to publish it. That's one thing. But usually the time frame is so that, well, usually I get contacted when they are like, so our board would like this news to go live on Friday. Like, how about that?
Who's
And
been there?
yes. And then my job is to be like, how about no? How about we work on this material, we make sure that you have like all the visual assets ready. Like, of course, in Finland, you might get a photographer come and take pictures of you, but mostly you don't. So you need to have great media kit, the story needs to be good, and most importantly, that pitching time. So the time when you reach out to Elina's and whoever you want the story, the so-called VIPs, we call them at San Francisco, to give them the time to react. Because as Elina said, like her calendar is already booked. So if we want to get a story that we would like to get out within the next month or so out, we need to give her some time to react to it. So it really depends on your goals. The more ambitious you are, the more you need to give it time.
Yeah, only if you are small giant games and bought by Zynga, then you can send me a text message and
Then you get to skip the line.
Yes.
So to say. Okay, yeah, good to keep in mind. Okay, Reetta, so I know myself that sometimes you have this feeling when you have like, you'd like to get some coverage, like to get some awareness for your company, but you have like absolutely nothing to announce. There's no funding being raised, you're not launching anything new, you don't have any exciting founder stories bubbling under, like there's nothing to say. So what can you in these situations do as a startup when you'd still like to have the potential to get some media coverage?
Well, you can do heaps. And let me assure you that, unless you're a big corporate, you might have something to announce every month. But that's not even like, I wouldn't say that's great PR. What you want to do is that you want to build yourself as a thought leader in the industry where you are at. So let's say you as a founder are a top-notch professional in e-commerce. Like, you want to be the source for journalists down the line to know that, hey, actually, I want to interview someone to this story about e-commerce, I'm going to reach out to that person. But you need to build that thought leadership profile. And thought leadership is great thing to do when you don't have anything to announce. So there's a lot of medias that take in guest contributions. Again, the article can't be self-promotional. Like, you can't go and, hey, we're an e-commerce platform that is here to disrupt and trailblaze and blah, blah, blah. No, you go in like, hey, there's this trend in e-commerce that we are seeing now from our data, like learn how consumers are behaving in online shopping right now. And then you pitch to those medias like, hey, we have this non-promotional, maybe exclusive story, exclusive meaning that you only offer it to one media. There's also opinion pieces that you can do in Finland as well. So there's a lot of things you can and you should do. So recognize the people in your company who are the kinds who feel comfortable speaking to media, who feel comfortable saying something. Like, that's another thing. Like, sometimes the founders are so afraid to say anything that the story becomes so lukewarm that I'm like, this isn't interesting. Like, no one wants to, like, you don't have to write an opinion piece. You don't have to say like, this is, terrible and so on. You don't have to be very extreme, but you need to be able to say something interesting. So yeah, those kind of things you can definitely do. And, pitch for interviews, go to events, like Deel was saying that they go to a lot of events. That's also part of PR. Updating your LinkedIn about like interesting, new things happening in the industry. That's PR as well. So
Yeah, we pick things from LinkedIn quite often, actually.
yeah, exactly. So, you just need to recognize the ones who are willing to do it and who have the time to invest in it. Because PR and building thought leadership profile takes time. So you can't be all hands-on in operational work and do that within 5 minutes you have in a week.
And actually, I would like to emphasize that in Helsingin Sanomat pages, if I have a headline that company X raised 5 million funding round, no one reads it. Like Helsingin Sanomat readers aren't interested about if someone gets a funding round. They are interested about people, the founder stories, the something they can relate to, or technology that is part of some bigger trend. Why does this change? What does this innovation do? Why does it matter to me? What does it change to my life or world? Like well-known names or something that they can relate to. I have to kind of cheat them a little bit to read the funding news. So I need to sell the story from some other angle than the company raised funding. And then some examples of our success stories from this spring, for example, where this Hoiva entrepreneur story that was exceptional, Somali background, it very kind of ambitious in a bold way, trying to change an industry that we all kind of have it's a societal question of where do we get to the nurses, and she has a bold claims that this is how it needs to be changed. This is the way we have trying to do the change, and this is why it has worked, and that's why we are growing, because of the bold nature of what she's doing. That was one of the most successful stories in Visio this spring. The entrepreneur story.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so the human element, as I said, we get so concentrated on the fine propriety, technology, AI, you know, give it all the buzzwords that our technology is using. But what is the impact? How does that, you know, change exactly how Elina said, people's lives? And so how we kind of see news is that, okay, it's good if you have something newsworthy happening. So a few things, like funding might be, it's a great way to kind of like breach that, okay, there's a change happening in your company that is newsworthy. But then it's all about the narrative behind it. Like, okay, what does this mean? Like, are you going to hire hundreds of people in Finland? Are you going to, you know, take this to new markets where you're going to change people's lives? So really bring the human element to the tech stories.
Yeah, funding is a point where a company has a change. It is going to new market. It's changing from research phase to actually go to market. It is if there's a change, it might be a news. If it's going to scale, if it's hiring 100 people, it makes it more interesting. But what is happening in the company is more important than the amount of money.
So Reetta was talking about finding someone within your company who's kind of like willing to talk and put the effort and profile themselves as a thought leader. And Elina, you were saying that like one of your greatest success stories came with this like bold claims. And so do you, Elina, ever find that startups or founders, CEOs are kind of like scared of the media, like afraid of saying too much or opening up, or actually kind of giving the story that you and the readers would like to read?
Yes, I suppose so. Although I hear it from others that someone is afraid to talk to you because you have done this investigative story before or something like that. And that's a myth, kind of, I would like to talk about the myths of journalism. It's kind of either journalists are just writing hype stories, like nice stories about you. No, we are not. But it's not either the journalists are just after a scandal or we are trying to dig some mud or we are something you should be afraid of. No. Those both are, both myths are not true. Yes, I have written some investigative journalism about startups. I've written about Swappi's problem, like the tech bro kind of culture in general in startups. I have written how there were problems in this Ren's original company that exploited Vietnamese young employees. But there is always a reason. The companies did something wrong or they had a problem and there were people who suffered from it. And if there is a problem, we as a journalists, that's our role in the society to look after, to give voice to those who might need to, who are in vulnerable position. And I don't want to write those stories. Like, I would be happy if you don't screw up. So please don't screw up, so I don't need to write about it. So, and if you screw up, then you could kind of fix it, like openly. Just fix your problem and then be constructive about it. You can be open about it. Then, okay, we screwed up. We learned. We are fixing it, and this kind of. I try to be very fair in my reporting all the time. That's my purpose. I try to be fair and balanced and accurate. So I'm not after a scandal. I'm trying to do a good journalism.
Yeah, exactly what Elina was saying. So that's what I always say when I spar about crisis comms, which is part of, if you don't have any kind of a crisis comms plan in place, please have something. Like, this is coming from a PR, like, discuss how are you going to handle if something happens. However, when we go through these discussions, I'm like, if you're afraid that a journalist might get a hint of something that is happening in your company, how about fix it? Like, it's not the comms team's like job to make something bad look good, nor is it journalists' job not to report if they see or hear that something is wrong. So
interesting. Let's take a note on sorting your crisis comms plan out after this session. Okay, Reetta, so we have, of course, Elina here today representing HS Visio, but there's for sure other media you as a startup can target as well. So how do you know kind of which media is the right one for you and kind of like who to approach with your story or idea?
Yes. So first of all, think about your business goals. So even if PR or earned media coverage isn't per se, it's not a sales lead tool. It's brand awareness building. But you still want to consider, what is my business goal? If your business goal next is to raise funding, or if it's to, get new clients, or if it's opening up a new market, align your PR strategy with that goal. So again, what Elina was saying, think about the audience. Okay, what is the audience behind the journalist that you want to reach to? If it's funding, consider tech startup medias, especially internationally. In Finland, we don't have that many. Most newspapers are either like regular, local or business, or there's like one for marketing and so on. But, the media scene is much smaller. But if you want to target like international media, think about the audience. If it's funding, go to Tech EU and EU startups, even TechCrunch, Sifted, again, the bigger the media, the bigger the news is you have to have, or the better the idea that you are pitching. If it's gain new clients. Don't spend your time pitching to TechCrunch because your clients are maybe in those smaller industry medias. Like, again, if you have an e-commerce platform, you need to go to e-commerce news because there's heaps of them internationally. If you're trying to go to new market, think about what kind of story could you pitch in the local language. It's a bit tricky for sure, but Deel is a great example. They started in Finland by just doing PR, you know, like they had one employee in Finland and then they hired us. So, you know, utilize that in getting new markets as well. But yeah, start with the business targets and then the target audience and then work kind of backwards from that to find the right journalist.
Great. Great tips once again. Elina, maybe one last question to you, and then I'll let you talk about anything that I didn't ask today, but you still want to share with our audience. So you said that you pick up news from LinkedIn. Sometimes you get a sneaky text. Sometimes it's maybe Reetta reaching out to you. But what are your tips or maybe like favorite ways on how to reach out to you and kind of approach you with a story or something that someone wants to tell you about?
Well, I'm quite direct, no bullshit kind of person, and I can be approached with very kind of direct way, just a few bullet points. What is the story? Why does it? What's the? If there is an embargo, what's the schedule? What is it about? And then we can just see if this is something we should discuss more. In email, then you can ping me in Twitter or LinkedIn in direct message. If I don't answer your email immediately, I might forget it. My day might be full, so I just might forget to answer. Sorry, so you can remind me. Don't do it like too many times, but then it's annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that.
Okay, that's good to know. So nothing too extra needed there.
Yeah, but there's a kind of no. Don't limit yourself too much about thinking this is not 100 million funding round. She won't be interested. You don't know what's interesting for me. Like kind of, I want to think that any of you could be the next Supercell, and then I'm proud to say that I've covered them since the beginning. I've known this entrepreneur from the seed round, and kind of we can dig up the story. There might be interesting innovation, or if you are in defense tech, that's hot at the moment. It doesn't matter what stage your company is, or if you have something that's interesting, kind of you can be a small company, or your idea might sound small. I don't mind if you pitch small things. I like to gather signals and be aware what's happening. I like to be aware of your company, maybe 2 years before I eventually write something. But let me decide, and you can pitch me.
Awesome point. Should we see if we have any questions in the audience? And there I see one hand raising at the front here, so let's kick off the audience questions.
Hi, thank you for a fun breakfast meeting. I'd like to ask about data and stories based on data. How do you feel about, startups, bigger companies collecting heaps of data and then offering you some stories based on these insights, perhaps drawn from the data? Is it suspicious, or are they do you like these kind of stories?
It depends if I think the data is actually kind of adding value, if it's unique, then yes, our readers are very interested about data and numbers in general. Like we might have a story that's three numbers or graphs that tell about this phenomenon. But we see a lot of kind of press releases that are these Suomen yrittäjät, the Finnish entrepreneurs, had a research where they investigated it in a poll about opinion on this and this. And we see through the agenda, they had the questions in a way that they get the right results. So, and we are not writing about that. It's not like real data. It's they have an agenda.
Yeah, you didn't ask me, but I'm gonna still say something about data. In general, I would say data is interesting, especially for international media as well. But you need to be super transparent. Like, what was the N? Like, how wide was the reach, and like just be transparent about it, and like also think about the industry media. Like they would probably love to hear how for example, how consumers are purchasing, or what kind of things are they purchasing, or purchasings are going down, or whatever it is. People buy hair crunches at 3 a.m. You might find something that is again surprising and educating, but just be transparent. Yeah, don't have an agenda behind your and is it a survey or is it a research as well? Like these kind of things are the ones that make it or break it with data.
Let's see, do we have any more questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Simo Hämäläinen from Alcohol. I have a question, and I'm sure you guys both, and Elina for sure, gets a lot of contacts and emails and phone calls. How would you like to be kept up to date? What happens with startups that you maybe covered already, and then some news are coming later on? Like, what's a good way not to fill fully your inbox every day just by telling that this happened? What's a good way of kind of keeping PR relations ongoing? Yeah, thanks.
Well, even though not every press release gets kind of into the news, I still read, well, the headline and then the small
Ingress or expert.
Yeah, but then I might not read longer than that, so make your point at first. So that's kind of already an update. So, and then if we have met, or if you send me kind of intro message, hi, we are company X, I'm just wanting to let you know what we're doing. Maybe this could be interesting to you at some point. There's this trend going on, and we are attached to this technology trend in this way. If you are looking for a case at some point about energy startups in this very interesting energy discussion or green transition, we are here. We have this kind of investments or kind of that kind of updates might be useful. So we can build a relationship in that way. You can contact me on LinkedIn, and that's how it builds up.
Yeah, like I joked in the beginning that I read HS Visio for a living, but that's actually a fact. Like I read a lot of news because I want to know what's happening. And then when I see something that I know that one of my clients or someone that I just know is doing something about, I'm like, hey, this is great time to like let the journalist know that you are also within this and you have something to say about this trend. So read a lot of news and be aware what's happening.
Good tips. And I also know in your blog at San Francisco, your website, you have a lot of great content on also kind of like how to build relationships with media and journalists, and kind of like remembering kind of the human aspect of this as well. And it's not only about always pitching and sending and like getting the article out there, but this is like two people or a group of people that are actually like communicating with each other.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually one PR myth that I want to bust here and let it like go somewhere and wither away and die, which is that, you know, if you talk to a PR pro and they say that, yes, I can get your story to the front cover of whatever because I know the journalist, take your money and run. Because seriously, if someone is trying to capitalize on their relationship with a journalist, it means that if you build the relationship, they are out of business. So they don't want to share the journalist's email, and they don't want to like be transparent about the way they work. Like, you should be building that relationship. I help when you don't have the time, or of course I know journalists. So, you know, maybe Elina opens my email more frequently, maybe not, I don't know. But it comes down to the story you have. And it doesn't matter who you know or who you don't know. If you don't have a great story, you know, you can't have your, you know, friend journalist, even if you're good drinking buddies, like make news about it. So don't build your own relationship with Elina and everyone, and you know, just reach out to PR Pro if you need some help.
As a friend of engineers, I really like the founders. Like I like talking with you. I like your stories, and I talk the nerd. So I'm used to your pitches that are full of this startup jargon and all kind of techie things. I don't mind. It's my job to translate it into understandable Finnish. So don't hesitate also to contact me directly. Yes, sometimes seeing a familiar name in the intro helps, of course. You know that with investors also. But it's not something that you always need someone between. But sometimes it helps you to see what's interesting in your company.
Great. Any last questions? Yes, we have one over here. Let's see how the mic will travel to you.
Good morning, everybody. Elina, you said that when you, for example, a pre-seed startup and you have some story about industry, you can start earlier. So maybe I have a story about industry, about dev tech and grief tech. Dev technology and grief technology. So when you look at cemeteries, the last homes on the graves, so you can think about this as a last home for resurrection, why people do that. But also you can think about the future, how dev tech and grief tech will change our society in 21st century, and how it's changed our mentality. So I know a lot of stuff about that.
Okay, that was a pitch, not a question. Okay, I was kind of what is he going to ask? Okay. But,
No.
Okay,
You just said like you can start earlier.
Okay, that's
Yeah, someone
It was call to action for me.
Good, you are a go-getter.
You have
Good job.
You have listened this morning, so that's good to hear. Okay, so maybe there wasn't a question in that question. So if there's any last question, we still have time for one. There we see one person waving. Annika is getting her steps this morning.
Yeah, so nice meeting you all, and a really nice talk. I was just thinking about successful stories and unsuccessful stories, and this is maybe a question for both. So, is there angles in unsuccessful stories, and how do you maybe sometimes, if a company comes to you with this magical story and you think of success and maybe whatever not successful means, like how do you advise those people to make an angle for the story, or is that something readers sometimes want to read, like resilience and not really success in that way? So maybe a complicated question, but yeah, let me know your thoughts.
So does it always has to be like the nice stories?
No, not at all. We were actually just talking about this before the breakfast started, that that sometimes people might be afraid to talk to the journalist because they think that Elina or someone else is gonna write a negative story, which they are not out for blood. Like, don't worry about it. No, like, it's again that human aspect to a story whose life is a constant linear success story. And if it is, great for them, but that's kind of boring. Like, no one wants to read about it. Like, again, what is educative is to say that, okay, my company tried to scale here and we did these 5 mistakes in doing it, so that no one else or someone else who reads the story doesn't repeat those mistakes. Like, not at all. Like, unsuccessful stories are really PR worthy, in my opinion, but Elina might.
Yeah, there was a case, your case with the book salon, for example. They made a bridge funding and they didn't get the big funding that they were trying to get. And would you think that's something that you want to pitch to a journalist? Well, actually, yes, because that I was writing a story about the Finnish venture, Suomen pääomasijoittajat, the Venture Capital Association, as data about last year's funding situation. And since this market is in an uncertain situation, we all think about where this market is going, how do we get the funding rounds, is there a VC capital at the moment? So not only big funding stories, but something that's useful, that tells about the market situation. It's a case in this story. So I wrote about that because it was something that's interesting at the moment.
Yeah, and super timely, as said, something that was happening in the market right now, and everybody was speaking that it's harder to raise funding, but no one actually came up and said like, yeah, we actually haven't been able to, until I spoke to Harry from Book Salon. So a little applause to Harry for like doing that story. Yay!
Good job, Harry.
To have the bravery to say that no, like, we had to change our strategy because what we had originally planned doesn't work anymore because the market has changed. So yeah, great example. Good story, read it.
And actually, like, learning from mistakes, learning from someone else's difficulties can be more valuable. So I would recommend you to be open and share those learnings because it can help others in similar situations.
True. Yeah, that's a very good point. Wow, I learned a lot of new things, and here I thought I actually knew something, but this was a great breakfast event. Hey, thank you to everyone who came here this morning. If you still have any questions, I think Reetta and the team from San Francisco will be around for a bit, so come and grab them and ask them if you have anything on your mind. Not gonna promise Elina, I don't know what her schedule look like, but if you manage to grab her, reach out to her. And then we have Frank from Deel here as well, giving out some nice Deel swag to everyone before you leave. And hey, if you want to know something about Maria01, about how to join our community and get help from these awesome PR pros that we have here as a member, I'm here here, Annika is here, and some other people from our team as well. So just come and talk to us and have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.